Everyone thinks heavy equipment is just about steel, engines, and horsepower. But the real story behind C&C equipment is far more unexpected. Tucked away in a small Indiana town, this company has quietly built a reputation for uncovering machines most people would walk right past. Forgotten military trucks, rare construction gear, and auction finds that seem almost too good to be real. But here's what viewers rarely see: the risks, the surprises, and the moments when deals nearly fall apart. Some machines arrive hiding costly secrets, and not every gamble pays off. So how did C&C turn uncertainty into obsession? And why is nobody talking about it? Most people assume companies like C&C equipment just appear overnight. A big lot full of machines, a steady stream of buyers, and business running like clockwork. But the reality started much smaller and far less certain. Long before the cameras were rolling, C&C was digging through overlooked listings, backroad auctions, and dusty surplus yards in Nashville, Indiana, searching for equipment others ignored. While bigger dealers chased brand new inventory, C&C leaned into the unpredictable: older machines, government surplus, and vehicles with stories buried beneath layers of grime. It was a strategy that looked risky from the outside. After all, buying used equipment without knowing its full history can turn into an expensive mistake fast. But that gamble quickly became their advantage. Instead of fearing the unknown, they learned how to spot potential where others saw scrap. A truck that wouldn't start, but only needed a simple fix. A machine parked for years, yet still packed with life. These weren't just purchases. They were calculated bets. And the surprising part? Word started spreading. Contractors hunting for value, collectors searching for rare rigs, and curious gearheads all began paying attention. Online discussions praised fair pricing and straightforward deals, helping build quiet trust around the name. Still, operating in the surplus world meant stepping into constant uncertainty. Every auction raised the same question: was this the next great flip, or a financial headache waiting to happen? What many didn't realize was that this pressure was shaping the company into something different. Not just a reseller, but a relentless hunter of overlooked opportunity. But just as things began gaining momentum, a new doorway opened. One that would pull C&C equipment out of the shadows and put them directly in front of thousands of viewers. The turning point didn't arrive with a massive contract or a flashy expansion. It came from a place most dealers never think twice about: the camera. At first, filming their projects wasn't some grand strategy to build a media presence. It was simple: show the machines, document the process, and give buyers a clearer look at what they were getting. But almost immediately, something unexpected happened. People who had zero intention of buying heavy equipment started watching anyway. There's something oddly satisfying about seeing a forgotten machine roar back to life. Viewers were pulled in by the uncertainty alone. Would the engine turn over, or was this about to become an expensive yard ornament? Every start attempt carried real tension, and that authenticity made the videos hard to click away from. Then came the auction footage. Instead of polished showroom walkarounds, audiences got a front row seat to the hunt itself. Rows of surplus trucks, unusual government, rigs, and equipment coated in years of dust created a kind of treasure hunt atmosphere. You never knew what would show up next, and neither did they. Some purchases looked like steals, others raised eyebrows. Why take the risk? What did they see that everyone else missed? As the channel grew, so did the trust. Buyers felt like they already knew the team before ever stepping onto the lot. Transparency became a quiet superpower, showing the wins, the headaches, and the moments when a great deal didn't look so great anymore. But with more eyes came more pressure. When thousands of viewers are watching your next move, every bid suddenly feels higher, and every mistake becomes a lot more public. And soon that visibility would lead to situations no one could have predicted. If auctions were unpredictable before, the spotlight made them even more intense. What used to be routine early mornings and quiet bidding wars suddenly carried a new layer of pressure, because now people were watching closely. And in the world of surplus equipment, attention can change everything. The truth is, auctions aren't just about throwing out the highest number. They're a mental game. Read the crowd wrong, hesitate for a second too long, or get caught in a bidding frenzy, and a smart buy can quickly turn into a damn expensive lesson. Yet C&C kept showing up, willing to make calls that many dealers would back away from. some of the machines looked almost suspiciously underpriced. Low hours, clean frames, barely any visible wear. Deals like that usually come with a catch. Maybe the equipment had been sitting unused for years. Maybe maintenance records were missing, or maybe there was a hidden issue waiting to surface the moment the key turned. And sometimes, that's exactly what happened. There were moments when a machine refused to cooperate, forcing the team to troubleshoot problems no one could have spotted from an auction listing. What looked like a quick flip suddenly demanded time, parts, and patience. Situations like these separate experienced buyers from hopeful gamblers, and every recovery became proof of how sharp their instincts had become. But here's what most viewers didn't notice. The risk wasn't just mechanical. Reputation was now on the line. When you build a following around smart finds, people expect you to keep delivering them. Still, the real surprise wasn't the occasional setback. It was how those challenges started strengthening the brand instead of hurting it. And that's when the audience began paying attention in a completely different way. By now, CNC equipment wasn't just attracting buyers, it was building a full-blown audience. And with any growing audience comes something every public-facing business eventually encounters: opinions. Lots of them. At first, the conversations were mostly positive. Contractors appreciated the straightforward approach. Collectors loved seeing uncommon machines hit the lot, and viewers respected the willingness to show equipment exactly as it was: dirt, flaws, and all. In an industry where glossy listings often hide the rough edges, that level of openness stood out. But attention always brings scrutiny. Some viewers started asking questions whenever a deal looked almost too good. How do they find this stuff? Why aren't more dealers chasing the same surplus machines? Others wondered about the risks behind older equipment, the kind of questions anyone would ask before making a serious investment. It wasn't backlash, more like curiosity mixed with healthy skepticism. And honestly, that curiosity helped fuel the channel. Because instead of ignoring those concerns, C&C leaned further into transparency. If a machine had quirks, they talked about it. If something needed work, viewers saw it happen. That honesty created a rare dynamic. People didn't just trust the wins, they trusted the imperfections too. Still, there was a side to this visibility that many never considered. Once thousands of people feel connected to your decisions, expectations quietly skyrocket. Every purchase gets analyzed, every repair gets second-guessed. Even a small miscalculation can spark a wave of armchair experts convinced they would have done it differently. Yet rather than pulling back, the company seemed to grow more comfortable under the microscope. Because what came next wasn't just about selling equipment anymore, it was about mastering the art of unpredictability. What most people never see about the heavy equipment world is that unpredictability isn't the exception, it's the job. And for C&C equipment, some of the biggest tests didn't come from auctions or competitors. They came from the machines themselves. On the surface, a freshly delivered truck or loader can look like a dream purchase. Straight body panels, minimal rust, even an interior that barely shows its age. But appearances in the surplus world can be dangerously convincing. Turn the key and suddenly that perfect machine reveals a stubborn silence. No crank, no movement, just the sinking realization that something isn't right. Moments like these can rattle even experienced buyers. Instead of hiding those setbacks, C&C often faced them head-on. Viewers watched as problems were traced back to unexpected culprits. Electrical gremlins, neglected components, or systems that simply didn't like sitting idle for years. Fixes that sound simple on paper can spiral into hours of diagnostics and parts sourcing, testing both patience and margins. Yet strangely, these weren't the moments that pushed people away. They pulled them closer, because struggle is compelling. Seeing a team refuse to quit on a machine creates real tension, the kind you can't script. When an engine finally coughs back to life after days of uncertainty, it feels less like a repair and more like a comeback story. But here's the part few talk about. Every delay ties up money, space, and time. In this business, momentum matters, and too many stalled projects can quietly stack pressure behind the scenes. Still, those challenges were shaping something far bigger than inventory. Without realizing it, C&C equipment was transforming from a dealership people bought from into a story people were emotionally invested in following. Somewhere along the way, C&C Equipment stopped feeling like just a place that sold machines. It started to feel like a series people didn't want to miss. Viewers weren't only clicking to see what was for sale anymore. They were showing up for the suspense, the risks, and the question that lingered over every new arrival. What's going to happen this time? Because by now, the pattern was clear. No two machines came with the same story. One week might bring in a rugged surplus truck that looked ready to roll straight off the lot. The next could introduce a decades-old piece of equipment that hadn't moved in years, leaving everyone guessing whether it would cooperate or completely refuse. That unpredictability created something powerful: anticipation. People began watching not out of casual interest, but out of habit. And habit is where real momentum lives. What made it work wasn't flashy marketing or overproduced content, it was the feeling that anything could go wrong, or surprisingly right. When a risky purchase paid off, viewers felt like they were part of the win. And when things got complicated, the tension made the eventual outcome even more satisfying. But growth brings a new kind of challenge: staying authentic once the spotlight gets brighter. Many businesses start polishing their image as attention grows, smoothing out the rough edges. Yet C&C seemed to understand that the rough edges were exactly what people trusted: the grit, the uncertainty, the problem solving. That was the story. Still, there was one question quietly hanging in the air. As the audience kept expanding, could they continue balancing transparency with the realities of running a high-risk business, or would the pressure eventually force them to change? Here's something most viewers never stop to consider. The bigger the audience gets, the higher the stakes become. What once felt like simple buy and sell decisions were now unfolding in front of thousands of watchful eyes. And in a business built on uncertainty, that kind of visibility can quietly change the way every move is made. Because growth doesn't just bring opportunity, it brings expectation. When people start associating your name with smart finds and dramatic recoveries, they assume the streak will continue. But the surplus world doesn't hand out guarantees. Markets shift, auctions get more competitive, prices climb as more buyers enter the space hunting for the same hidden gems. Deals that once slipped under the radar suddenly attract bidding wars, and that raises the pressure in ways viewers rarely notice. Now, every purchase has more riding on it because of not just profit, but reputation. One overpriced machine, one project that drags on too long, and the whispers begin. Not outrage, not scandal. Just that quiet online chatter questioning whether the magic is still there. Yet this is where experience becomes the real advantage. Instead of chasing hype, successful operators learn when to walk away, even from equipment that would look great on camera. Discipline isn't exciting, but it's often what keeps a growing business steady, while others burn out trying to keep up appearances. Still, perhaps the most surprising shift wasn't happening in the yard or at the auctions. It was happening in the way people viewed the company itself. C&C Equipment was no longer just participating in the heavy equipment world. In many ways, they had become part of the reason people were paying attention to it in the first place. And that kind of influence brings a future filled with both massive possibility and very real unknowns. So when you step back and look at the full picture, the C&C Equipment story isn't really about trucks, loaders, or auction wins. It's about something far more compelling. What happens when a quiet, hard-working business suddenly finds itself in the spotlight without ever chasing it? Because the truth is, most companies in this industry operate behind the scenes. Deals get made, machines move on, and nobody outside a small circle ever hears about it. But C&C pulled the curtain back. They showed the risks, the near misses, the problem machines, and the victories that only came after long, uncertain days. And in doing so, they turned ordinary business operations into something people genuinely wanted to follow. That kind of connection is rare. It wasn't built on perfection. It was built on unpredictability, the willingness to say, let's see what happens, even when the outcome wasn't guaranteed. And ironically, that uncertainty became their greatest strength. But here's the question that lingers: what happens next? As more viewers discover the channel and competition continues creeping into the surplus space, staying true to that original formula may become the ultimate test. Growth can tempt any business to play it safer, to avoid the messy projects, to protect the image. Yet playing it safe has never been what draws people in. Maybe the real reason nobody talks about the C&C equipment story is because it's still being written. The next auction, the next risky purchase, the next machine that refuses to start, it could all change everything. And if there's one thing this journey has proven, it's that the most fascinating stories are the ones where the ending hasn't been decided yet.